snow is falling. The movie's flickering. I go where it's silver, watching their hair, wondering where fantasy ends and real begins. I know it's all pretense. Don't let this feeling end, 'cause somewhere in silver, truth starts to bend at trade movies, podcasts with friends.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm shit. It's like I'm so in my head about my intros now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Trade Movies. Today I'm talking to Kristina Reinis, who's a content creator, public scholar, artist, and historian. She is on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and she has a specialty in American evangelicalism in the construction of white womanhood in the United States. Kristina, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. If you don't follow Kristina, you absolutely should, because she is great and I love her videos. Just a few of the ones that she's done recently, you might have seen because it went pretty viral. Why do conservative women look like that? A video essay. And then why do conservative women hate drag, which I want to talk about. Erica Kirk and Marrying America, Ann Lee, the female Christ, a whole bunch of stuff on Ann Lee. Which is one of the reasons she's on the show today, because there's a new Ann Lee movie out. So that's actually where we got to start. Who is Ann Lee?
Oh, wow. So true. Quick summary, because it's quite complicated. But in short, she was the founder of the Shakers, which was a religious movement that was started in England and then moved to the United States. And basically, she was a female prophet in her own time, which was super crazy to do in like 18th century England. She came to the US, she started the Shakers. She believed that the second coming of Christ had happened, which is something in Christianity, is this belief that Jesus will return to earth. And she had this epiphany that to live in ultimate perfection was to be celibate. So a lot of people focus on celibacy, but it was a very core part of their movement. And she was also just very ecstatic.
While she was married, right? She came to that conclusion after she had four kids, or
Yes.
four stillbirths, I think. Or
Yeah, so she actually had one of the very few records we have is we do know she lost one daughter at the age of 6. The other 3 we assume like they were lost like right after or during childbirth or stillbirths.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna like, just as a warning, because I've been given full free reign, I will be that annoying person that's like, actually, well, the movie said this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm giving myself full permission without shame to do that. But yeah, after she had these like horrific births and the death of her children, it makes sense that one would come to the conclusion to not do that. But also, and actually one of the 3 remaining Shakers was very mad about the Testament of Ann Lee because he felt like it reduced her visions and revelations to this response to loss with childbirth, which like I do agree with. I don't think that it should be reduced to it because there's so many other things that are just as fascinating, but it definitely was a factor.
Yeah. If you lose four kids, I mean, that's got to be, yeah.
Also, she did not want to get married.
Did she not?
No, I mean, I feel like so that if, we need to have a more quick summary, Ann Lee was the founder of the Shakers and a very ecstatic woman, and started one of the most long-lasting and successful religious communal utopias in the United States. So, which is a pretty huge thing, and it's still existing today, even though people say they're all dead. There's at least 3 left, and that's very impressive when your whole religion is centered around celibacy, that you're still here in 2026. So her message really resonated with people on like a very deep level. I just wanted to quickly have a more succinct explanation of her. What was your question?
Oh no, I was just honestly, I had this. So that was more looking at my notes. I forgot to send you the clip, but I don't. Do you know? It's going to be so stupid of a reference. Do you know who Mike Francesa is? The sports radio guy, New York. Probably not. He's like,
I don't know.
You're not like a 55-year-old New York Giants fan.
I'm not. Yeah. Maybe one day.
Maybe, yeah. We all could be. He was in Uncut Gems, so there's a slight movie connection there. But there's a famous clip of he's known for like just sort of getting into it and being kind of like this sort of all respect to you, Mike, but in love to you, like kind of a pompous, a little bit like sort of like New York sports radio crazy guy. But there's a famous clip where Stan Lee died, the comic creator of Marvel Comics or whatever, and someone calls in and like they go, "Hey Mike, how you doing? You know, Stan Lee died. Do you have any thoughts? Did you ever meet the guy?" And he just goes, "Who is Stan Lee? Who is Stan?" And the guy just goes, "Jesus." And he just, "Who is Stan Lee?" And then one of his producers chimes in and is like, "Oh, he was the creator of Marvel Comics." And he goes, "Who cares? Who cares?" And I'm sorry, I never read any comics, not a comic book guy. Sorry, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but who cares? And so this whole time we've been doing Ann Lee, I've had "Who is Ann Lee" stuck in my head as like just sort of a vocal stem. Yeah.
Who is she? Skimming. She's a complicated woman, you know. She's been called the communist, a feminist, like a female Christ, which is actually a lot more complicated than the movie makes out to be.
What do you think about the movie? I guess that might be a good
I guess that's probably a good place to start because otherwise I'll derail myself.
Not at all. No, yeah.
So I went into the movie with incredibly low expectations because I study 19th century women's religious history. It's a lot of what I do. I'm deeply aware of the time period. And I had also been in such a deep research hole because I was like, when am I going to have a moment in modern culture where people are interested in 19th century women's religious history? Literally never. That's why I went so deep into this because I was like, this is my time. Also, I've always loved the Shakers, so it was an excuse to do it. I actually did really enjoy it with some pretty major caveats, but like overall, I genuinely could tell that the director cared like very deeply about the history. The timeline was shockingly historically accurate from what we know. Like shockingly accurate. I've never seen a film where they cite their primary sources in the end credits. They literally cited which, and I could tell, which I'll get to that in a second. But I kind of want to ask you a question about it before I share my big fun facts. But I actually really enjoyed it. I thought the choreo was amazing. The music literally on repeat. Literally it's just me walking around listening to this, listening to the Testament of Ann Lee.
I've been kind of doing the little, someone posted, shout out your friend Kate on TikTok, but she did to post a dance. So I've been kind of, I don't know how to do the dance, but the whole thing, I've been kind of walking around doing that.
Great. I think my two biggest critiques, and then we'll fully get into it, is they definitely were girl bossifying her. And I get it. And especially at the end, which was rushed, I felt like the first 3/4 of the movie, chef's kiss, beautiful. I think that it's hard to show a religious ecstatic, experience in an entertaining yet respectful and honoring way. And I feel like Amanda's, playing of her was such a clear show of devotion and care. Dude, the last fourth, I was like, what? The last fourth, and I think it's this needed to be 2 movies. I know no one would watch that. They already struggled with this first one. That's not going to happen. But they did such a meaning. It feels like they ran out of money or something, which I know is not. But the first 3/4 are so historically accurate. It's really beautifully done. And then the last 5 years of Ann Lee's life, which to me are the most interesting, completely collapsed. And I was like, interesting, this just happened. How much time's left? And then she just dies. And I was like, oh. I was like, huh, interesting. I think we should be in this year. And then she just died. And I was like,
I was surprised that she died so suddenly.
It was really abrupt. Yeah. And the reason why it felt abrupt is because that's not how that happens. Or or just like, I mean, she did just die. She's
She was like
mortal.
48, I think.
Yeah, she's 48.
Was she sick?
Dude, she just got like the shit beaten out of her. Can I cuss? I'm like, she just got the shit beaten out of her. I mean, from the records that we do have, a really important precursor to everything about Ann Lee is like a historical person, as a mythological figure. The Shakers banned, including Ann Lee, banned their members from writing down their own history. That means writing down any of their hymns, any of the dance stuff, any of their theological like writings. Completely banned it.
No sex, no history.
No sex, no history. And they did have a theological reason for it. As a historian, infuriating. So the first, we literally, in the entire first 40 years of the Shakers in the time of Ann Lee, there are 2 theological documents, and they don't even mention Ann Lee at all.
Jeez.
And they're from the 2 male predecessors after her. There's reasons why they didn't, and because anyways, the first like actual document we have is in 1808. And then the movie is mostly based off of this 1816 and 1812 collection of Ann Lee's life, where a lot of the first generation, or the first believers, as they call them, of the Shakers were dying. And they were like, guys, we're losing population. We got to get these youngins psyched about Ann Lee, and they don't know her. So they did a bunch of interviews, and those are the first actual primary sources we have. So basically everything is a big like question mark, thumbs up on her as a person. Besides, the things we do have during her time are anti-Shaker testimonies that were being published while she was still alive. Juicy. Court documents, because they were arrested a bunch. Newspaper articles, because they were doing a lot. I'm getting real Southern as I continue to explain this. So it's kind of a nightmare to put a timeline together. And that's why I was so shocked about how accurate the movie was, because I had to literally manually construct my own timeline because I was having such a hard time. Yeah. Sorry, that was my long rant, but I feel like it's important context, because it really is like a lot of it is a big question mark. So like I'll delineate what I can say for sure versus what is just kind of like stuff written 40 years later.
Yeah, I was always curious. Like, I never knew the difference of like Shakers, Quakers. Like, you know, I didn't really like grow up. Until I moved to the South, I did, and then I like learned about like modern evangelical Baptist, Methodist, that that type of stuff. But I was like, I remember hearing about them when I grew up in New England, because I grew up the first bit in. So like you would hear about them in like colonial history, like because I feel like in Tennessee we got a lot of Civil War history, obviously. But here we got like a lot of colonial because of all the stuff in especially Western Massachusetts, which I think was where some of the stuff was going on, I believe.
The Berkshires. Yeah. So Anne was, I mean, the first one was in upstate New York, New Lebanon, which they show. But then after that, like, which is my other critique of the film. And I get why they did it. Like, they only had so much time. But it's kind of ironic because they were like girl bossifying her, but then they also domesticated her. Because when they're in New York, she's just at the home, like doing woodworking and shit during that musical number, which I get it. They had to show the Shaker furniture and the art. I'm really glad they did that. You got to show the people the legacy. Yay. Her brother was not out there preaching by himself, getting new converts. Ann Lee was with him and a few other elders. She was traveling everywhere. And so the reason she died so young is because everyone was trying to kill her. Massachusetts especially hated her. And that makes sense. Like, imagine going to Boston being like, I'm British, and kind of seeming like a female Christ. They're not going to be psyched. They really did think she was a British spy. Like, we have articles and anti-Shaker testimonies that were like, so that kind of answers 2 in 1. That's why she died early. There's this story of her being tied at the ankles behind a wagon, dragged on ice for miles. Like, just dragged straight on the ice. And she died like a few months after that. And later when they like moved her grave to a different Shaker community, they found her skull was fractured in 3 places.
Damn.
So she was probably living with like a literal fractured skull for 6 months before she died.
Jeez.
So someone commented on my TikTok about Ann Lee being like, was it religious persecution or mental health care? And I was like, what?
She got bashed in the head.
Not like you have to be like pro, religious offshoot, but like, shit, dude. I don't think anyone deserves that.
I think if I got my skull fractured, I would have some PTSD at least. And I think that sort of counts as mental health care. So probably a bit of both.
That's funny, yeah,
I was fascinated by it.
I want to know your thoughts.
I went by myself last week in the afternoon, just to see it, and before like I think it's still in theaters. But it was fascinating. I don't think I've ever seen a movie like it. So there's like I have like complicated feelings on it. I think like movie perspective wise, I'm always like I love Bob Fosse, like Cabaret, all that jazz. Like I love musicals. And so in terms of just being a musical, I was very happy because like I can't remember a musical that I think is really quite like this one in form. So it's like I'm always looking for people to do new things with the musicals as opposed to like, as much as I love La La Land and I adore La La Land, I'm one of the La La Land La La stands. I don't know what they call them, but I just thought it was like a really well done classic musical. But they wasn't really novel.
No.
Yeah, but like Bob Fosse, all that jazz is like super novel in a lot of stuff. 20 Centimeters, another great musical from 2005, is like has a lot of like super novel stuff going on in it. But even like a lot of the newer ones, you don't necessarily get a ton of new stuff. But like this, I had not seen the musical as a form done like that. So I thought that was really interesting and fascinating, I guess.
I mean, I think that was the strongest part. The choreography was not only like, so the choreography was not only amazing, but it was historically accurate. I have a video where I talk about this a little bit more in depth, but like from the writing, so people like when Ann Lee was alive, this is one, again, the few documents that we do have, they would just like people go and watch them, which is like hilarious to me. So people would like assess what you do in the 19th century. You're like, 18th, I'm bored. I'm just going to watch this like random cult do their thing. And so they would
I would have done that. I would love to do that.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'd be there in the stands. Honestly,
if you're a cult leader out there, please invite us. We'll go.
It's a joke I've made for a long time, and I probably shouldn't. I was like, if my religious trauma got me more, I'd probably bring the Shakers back.
There's one in Utah, I think, that you can do. I remember, shout out Truanon. I don't know if you're a Truanon listener, but I love Truanon. I think some guy was saying that he went there, and there's pyramids in Truanon in Utah. I think the Sumum pyramid, probably. Where like there's a pyramid in Utah where you can go, and it's like, I think, and I'm not, for all you people who might live in the pyramid, I'm not saying that you are a cult or whatever. I'm just saying other people may have allegedly said that. I just heard it third hand through a podcast. Sumum is a new religious movement that began in 1975. As a result, I'm reading the Wikipedia, as a result of American citizen Claude Corky Knowles' claimed encounter with beings he described as Summa individuals. According to Knowles, these beings presented with him concepts regarding the nature of creation, yada, yada, yada. But they have a pyramid in Utah, and I think they're pretty, as I understand it, they're pretty friendly, and they practice modern mummification and transference. And I think like you can like, they'll just like let you in the pyramid, I think, is like, I'm trying to recall from this podcast, but it's like just a pyramid in Utah that you can go to.
I'm looking at images right now while you're talking.
You can come hang out. So maybe we can,
there a lot of religions are open to that, depending, but choreo, before I forget. So like the rounding of the arms and beating of the chest is like how it was described. And specifically, one of them says they would like move their hands and bodies like it's in a wheel. And so the other thing that was cool, which a lot of people wouldn't know, and what I really appreciated about the choreo as a historian. So the beginning where they're like falling over each other and just screaming and making noises and not really like singing actual lyrics. It's like when they're in England and it's like the poster image.
Yes. Yeah.
So that initial worship scene where people are kind of just yelling and it's like just I can't sing. So it's just like the la la la's like, thing. That is like actually more accurate to what Shaker worship was when Ann Lee was alive. Like that would have been a really boring movie to just deeply upsetting to watch that over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But then Shaker choreo over time developed into that super, like the line thing and going in a circle and the exchange. That didn't start until like 1810s because of this like one dude, Joseph Meacham, who they cut out of the film. He's like one of the most important and formative. They just collapsed his character with William Lee, the brother. Like William Lee was definitely an important figure. He was not that like actually most of the accounts were kind of like William's kind of weird. Like a lot of these like accounts, like which I know. But I mean, he was very involved, but there was this other guy, Joseph Meacham, who and James Whitaker, who also had a very like small role in the film. You know, the guy at the end who they showed taking over the Shakers. She called like him like her son, and then Joseph Meacham was her like favorite American-born son. Which was, anyways, I'm distracting myself, but as I will continue to do. But the what I thought was really beautiful, because again, you only have so much time. You can't do 2 movies, but the choreo like evolved as the Shakers did. And even though it's not accurate to the timeline, it got to show how like the dance reflected these narrative changes. And as the religion got more formalized, so did the form of choreo, which is actually what happened in Shaker history, where it did become this very like regimented thing. And so I thought that was beautifully like done. Like, I'm like, how do you tell a story? Like, how do you tell history through choreography and have it feel seamless? I thought that was just excellent.
Yeah, I really did like that part. It was one of those movies where it's like, I feel this way about, I was talking with my brother about this last night. I feel this way about some modern movies, where it's like, I don't like, they asked me how it was, like my housemates when I came home, because I told them I was going to see it for the pod. I was like, I don't know, because it's like, I thought it was good and I really enjoyed it, and like I enjoyed it for what it was, but it's like one of those things of like, I've never seen anything like it, and I don't like, it's not necessarily something I can almost even like just from a whole, like, it did what it was trying to do perspective, which is not my favorite way to review movies or whatever. Because that was also my thing of like, whatever it was trying to do, I think it did really well. I don't know that I would have done it like that. And I think there's other movies that could have been made, and like there's other stuff that I would have liked to see them focus more on. But it felt like my overall takeaway was like, this was almost like, it felt very 2026 and 2025 in that I think like there's a trend, like creators and celebrities and stuff are like, they know the media now, and like they know the importance of like media representation, and they have access, and they're like a bit wiser about like, they are the ones who can sort of control their story, which kind of sucks for art, because like we don't get someone else's perspective on Michael Jordan. We get like, Michael Jordan has to authorize the series that was done about him. Now, I think the Michael Jordan series was pretty good, because he is like, I don't know, he seemed, they just did it, I thought pretty honestly. But like, there's like the New England, you see this a lot in sports documentaries now. You can see this in ESPN 30 for 30, where it's like the first season, they just hired people telling stories that they wanted to tell. And then like over time, it sort of shifted into like almost just propaganda. This kind of felt almost like Ann Lee propaganda.
No,
like,
it was
from Shaker. Like if I was like, it felt like a movie that Ann Lee, or someone who wrote, like someone who really loved Ann Lee and who was a Shaker, might have made about Ann Lee, in terms of like, if the Shakers, you know, I let people screw and have kids and like were able to grow their movement and got like their own sort of like religious channel at a certain point, it's like it, but like kept their specific weirdness. It felt like this could have been like a movie made by the Shakers to sort of promote Ann Lee, if it's kind of what it felt like, which that's why it felt, I guess, very modern.
And it is funny because, I mean, the existing Shakers hated it. Like, or one of the, I mean, he was like, he just was, again, very fixated on the fact that there was this kind of like direct collapsing of, if Ann Lee would have not lost her children, she probably would have started this movement. And I get that. So it's funny because I think that I feel similarly in the fact there's so many more interesting things that they could have talked about. As in, like, even just the idea of her starting this religion and, like, what it meant to her to, like, especially because they completely cut out the part where from 1779 to 1784, Anne Lee was traveling between Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, no, Connecticut, Maine, New York, and Massachusetts. Like, she was everywhere. They were setting up
Anne Lee World Tour.
Anne Lee World Tour. And like they totally cut that. And I get for time. I think if I hadn't spent so much time with the Shakers and Anne Lee, this is going to be related to your propaganda thing. If I hadn't spent so much time with this stuff beforehand, I think I would have been frustrated by that. And I found other people who weren't, so lost in the research as me to be frustrated by that, because there were parts of the film that felt like they just would cut to the camera and tell you a fun fact and then never return to it or explain it at all. Like, everyone has to call her mother now. And then you're like, what? Yeah. And then and there's like so much complexity to all of those things they kind of threw around. However, the reason why I have my official endorsement of it is because there is this 1980s collection of Shaker theology, the first ever attempted collection of their theology. The introduction's written by a Shaker, but this guy who's very passionate about it, not a Shaker. I think he tried to join, they didn't let him, which is hilarious. Because they were like, I don't think this is your path, man. One thing he wrote, which I loved, was that, like, he said for Shakers, like, faith is not belief. Faith is experience. Like, they were such a deeply experiential movement. They were influenced / split off from, like, Quakers, and also had some Methodist First Great Awakening influence, where the Quakers were, a big part of their faith is this idea of everyone has an inner light, and their religious services are everyone is silent. And then you can stand up if you feel like called by the Spirit or by the light. Part of the reason the Shakers split off in England in the first place is because they were like, you're ruining the vibes. I want to go kind of crazy. And they were like, Quakers were like, no, that's too much. And they were like, okay, we're going to split off. And that's why they're shaking Quakers, because they had a deep belief in this, like, inner light that you're supposed to, like, follow. But they were very, like, ecstatic and expressive about it. And so when I think about the Testament of Anne Lee and, like, what it means to kind of respect the spirit of the actual religion, that movie was so much about, like, the bodily, physical experience and, like, showing Anne Lee's inner spiritual journey. Even though we can't know it, I felt like for what you can do from an assumption, it was really good. And and that's why it being musical makes sense. Not only because Shakers, like, ended up influencing a lot of American choral tradition. Fun fact, Obama's inauguration, Yo-Yo Ma played a Shaker hymn. Like, it's everywhere, even if we don't know it. But, like, so for me, that's what kind of made me forgive some of the narrative lapses and also forgive some of the awkwardness of the film, because I knew that, like, while there's this famous quote that I love from a Shaker in, like, the 1970s, where she's like, I fear I will be only remembered as a chair. Because, like, Shakers only became, known for furniture for so long that, like, and I was like, what a sick quote. I love that. I like fear being only remembered as a chair. And I'm like, honestly, I think I'd be okay with that. But this film really emphasized what it meant to, like, try to feel God. And I think that is, whether you're religious or not, a fascinating and almost, I think, in my opinion, people who disagree, but an honorable, like, pursuit, whether, God's real or not, or whatever. It's not the point. It's like they were really trying to feel something and build something. And I feel like they conveyed that kind of almost desperation really well.
Yeah. That to that part, it felt like the movie I always bring up, I think, is the best example of this was Goodfellas, or is Goodfellas, about like, and honestly, Wolf of Wall Street's very similar, about, like, it's trying to sort of
emanate the feeling.
Emanate the feeling, show you why this would be attractive, like why someone would do this, why, like, in Wolf of Wall Street, it's like the sort of frat boy, funny camaraderie that's like, overlaying this like kind of sort of warped sense. In Goodfellas, it's, you know, it's fucking, they had a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun to just do it, and like they were the cool guys, and like that's, you know, the cool in the power in the neighborhood and all that. It sort of showed you why someone would be attracted to this lifestyle. I got that sense with the Shakers. It's like it came, I was like, man, should I just start shaking? Like, should I just,
Right?
like
The
should
vibes.
I,
I'm like,
yeah,
guess
do the
I'm
roboto
joining.
dance? Yeah.
I think also, by the way, of why didn't they write down their history, now that I've explained this part, they believed that if they wrote down their theology and fixed what their beliefs were, they were closing themselves off from like the inner light. And so
I
that's
kind
why,
of love that.
yeah, I do. It's badass, honestly. They were
Yeah.
like, we don't want to ruin the vibes, so let's not
Yeah.
solidify anything. And then they were kind of forced to, because they were communal living. When Anne, like, and the elders traveled around New England, they would like feed everyone. Like they were known for feeding everyone. It was very communal. But then when the Shakers were like 40 years in and had quite a few communities, they kept getting scammed. People would
Yeah.
come like join to be a Shaker for a year or two and then get off their feet and then they would leave.
Yeah.
Or people would just like, so they were like, okay, maybe we do need to have some like regulations on who can join and like what our beliefs are. But yeah, it's because they didn't want to hide that like inner light. And actually, Shaker theology now is still really hard to study, because if we're going to use the actual theological term, it's processual theology, which is like ever evolving.
Okay.
And so so like there were Shakers who would completely disagree. For example, a good example is some Shakers did believe Anne Lee was the female Christ. Some vehemently disagreed, and they were
Is that
still Shakers.
because of is that because they came out of the Quaker tradition? Because like Quaker tradition is like much more, as I understand it, much more democratic and like more, I think, right? Like, I mean, that's the stereotype I have. It's like, it's more everybody like gets to speak. It's much more,
Yes.
seems like much more equivalent. I don't know what the word is, but is that from that of like more people have sort of an input on the faith?
I think that like, absolutely, when it comes to, and that's what's ironic about evangelicalism I wouldn't put Quakers as evangelical, but like, that's what's ironic about evangelicalism in general in America now, because it's this conservative nightmare. But like, the idea that you as an individual could like hear from God and have influence on theology as a person yourself created so many opportunities for minorities, for other folks who are normally not included, to have religious authority. So that's why also there's so many like offshoots, like Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventists, all of these things. Because if everyone can have individual access to God, everyone can create their own Christian religions to argue over super tiny, minuscule things. And so Quakers, though, specifically to answer your question, this inner light, like Quakers were the biggest abolitionists at the time. Like they were, honestly, love the Quakers. They've consistently had a fairly good track record. I'm saying kind of, there were some Quaker slave owners, like there were some, obviously it's not gonna be perfect. So I do think that did create this opening for the Shakers.
I live near Friendsville in Tennessee, which is like, that's,
Yeah.
still big Quaker community.
Still big Quaker community, yeah. The thing is, though, is the like, whether can't tell if you were asking about this explicitly or not, but I'm going to talk about it anyways.
Sure.
The dual like gender God had like this idea of like this very rigid gender binary, that like probably wasn't happening while Anne Lee was alive. We have absolutely no evidence whatsoever, which is such a disappointment to me, and I would not be saying this if I didn't try, that she claimed to be a female Christ during her time. She was more likely like seen as like a female prophet. She definitely led it. She definitely founded it. Like she was definitely at the epicenter of the community, but they got like, the filmmakers got duped, basically. There's one book which there's one book that this person claimed that the Wordley group, who, you know, you see with Anne in the beginning and like stuff, that's like the original group before she has her like revelations. In the movie, they're like, and we're looking and waiting for a female Christ. I was like, the fuck you weren't. What are you talking about? One person just made that up, and then it just stuck forever. There's like, they were waiting for Christ. They were waiting for the second coming of Christ. They were not explicitly waiting for a female Christ. They were waiting for a sign the second coming was happening. It's more likely the Shakers believe the second coming of Christ happened in the church as a collective, and Ann Lee was like the instigator. That is so niche and confusing. And then if you have a woman who's then leading it, and everyone keeps saying the second coming of Christ as appeared in Anne, of course people are going to think it's a female Christ. Like, and then later, the first Shaker theological text we have that explicitly claims her to be the female Christ is in 1808. Interestingly enough, because it's not talked about, that theology came out of the Western side of Shaker in Kentucky, in Ohio, which I actually just met with the head curator of exhibitions for one of the Kentucky Shaker communities. She reached out to me on TikTok, which I'm like, what a joy. We had like an hour-long conversation, but I learned a lot about Kentucky Shaker history. But anyways, yeah.
And
so
is she like was she in 1808 was like 24 years? I'm looking at it after she died, so it's like
longer.
It's not.
Yeah, I think that it was 30 years.
1784
after
says on Wikipedia.
1784
I think
she died. So
I'd never seen this picture of her with the big forehead. That's crazy. She looks like a what's the guy? The guy who created all the white people in the Black Israelite. She looks like a white Jacob. Or white Yakub. I don't know how to. Yeah, just looking at this picture. If you go on the Wikipedia it says it's a psychometrics.
It's the only drawing we have. I don't know a ton about the history behind it. Some people claim it was like drawn super far after. Like, we just don't have any. Like, obviously, she was born before photography was invented. But
that's wild. I think so. Yeah, I think the thing. Well, actually, before I get into like, I guess the other thing, I did want to ask about, because that'll tie into the movie that I picked, which it's probably gonna be like a half hour before we get back to it, just knowing because of the question I'm gonna ask. But I picked Elmer Gantry, which we both I think have a lot of thoughts on. And I think there's some interesting both overlap and differences. So I wanted to ask though about the sort of the ecstatic thing. And when you said it's like an experiential, what was the word that you used? It was like a $2 word or a $10 word. That was like, it was the type of religion, or no, you said, never mind. You said that about like the theology that was ever changing. My bad.
Processual theology.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
But I had a question because you said it was like very, because the thing I liked about that, it showed sort of the ecstatic side of like the religion in a way that like we're less and less religious, I think, in general. I don't know. There's a whole like, I guess he's canceled now, so I don't know if I can use him as a damn thing. But Neil Gaiman, the American Gods like thing about like, I don't know if you ever read that book or the show. I don't know if I can recommend it now because well, I don't think I can also recommend piracy. So don't read it nor pirate it, I guess. But the book itself I thought was in show was interesting in that like sort of the plot of it is like I think as I remember, like gods and sort of religious things get power from the amount of people and like the amount of sort of worship directed at them. So it's like American gods are stuff like TV and like, modern would be like Instagram. So like in the book and in the show, there'd be like, I think one of the gods is like media or like mass media or like whatever. And there's still Jesus and there's still like, so it's like the plot of it is like Odin and some of these gods that aren't necessarily worshipped in March are getting like usurped by these newer sort of American gods. So I don't know how that connected, but all that's to say, like there is, I'd be curious about like the sort of different, like is there a thing of like a general difference sort of in theology or in these evangelical movements between like this sort of ecstatic experiential stuff versus like faith by works is like, I'm like half Catholic, half Jewish. So like, that's like sort of, I mean, we didn't really go to either. So I don't really know a ton about any of this stuff. I probably know more, having more experience with evangelical stuff, just growing up in East Tennessee a lot.
Yeah.
Versus like, but East Tennessee, I don't think I went to any churches before I found out, or before I told them that I was Jewish. I had to go to a lot of my friends' churches because they would like be like, oh, you need to get saved. And like, that was their thing. And like, whatever, in middle high school. Once I told them they're Jewish, like, oh, we're wasting your time on you, which was great. Cause they were like, you're already chosen. I was like, oh, that's, good for me.
Interesting.
I'm in heaven.
I mean, yeah. Interesting. Okay.
It was great.
That's
like
also very specific like theological offset too of like belief that's not going to be all evangelicals. But anyway,
Well,
sorry, continue.
yeah, I love it though. That's like,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
almost
it's
like
great.
I don't know what it, like, there's like Jewish Christians or whatever, Christian Jews. I don't know what those mean.
Messianic Jews.
Okay. But I'm the one that I don't have to do anything and I'm just chosen. Like, cause that would work out well for me. So whatever that belief is, I'm like, I should do that just sort of, know, politically.
Mhm.
But like those churches that I went to, they weren't about good works, but they also didn't seem to be about sort of this ecstatic religious experience. They seemed to be more about like a community. It seemed like very community oriented. Like it's faith, it's faith by being saved and by faith, by acceptance. It felt very lazy. It felt very like, I don't like, to me, it's like, I've never really liked it. Well, it's like you can't like, I feel like it just gives people an excuse to like not be good people because it's like, well, I'm saved, so I don't really have to modify my behavior. It's like, well, you don't really have any skin in the game then. It's like, if you show me like you're Annalee, like you're not having, like, I believe the Annalee people more than anything else is like, if you guys are really just no sex and like no, like, and you're getting the shit beat out of you for like 20 years, it's like, I believe I believe in you. Like, I believe in your thing. So it's like, more than I believe someone who like goes to church like once a month and is like, I'm saved. So I'd be just curious about like, but also when I thought about that, another segment of people in East Tennessee were, I believe it's Church of Christ people, not all Church of Christ, but some Church of Christ with the snake handling, which like, I don't know that I went to anyone. I think there was like a couple kids in my high school, maybe it was just friends of friends, but like you sort of heard about it going on in some of the more Appalachian and more like, I think it's less and less. But I do also see, you see there's a lot of videos of like, Orthodox Jewish guys going crazy at like dances and everything and like some religious movements where it's like, it's clearly there's this sort of ecstatic thing going on. And so there is still a strain of it. So it's like, are the sort of like three general like groups sort of like, and I also think about the guys who are like getting saved on TV, like, the sort of televangelist preachers love that. That's in speaking in tongues and like the evidence, like that seemed like, so is there like a strain of that? Like, is there like a word for that of like that sort of ecstatic experiential stuff? And is that in contrast to like, I don't know, like, the faith by works and faith by saving? Just like,
I think,
what are the phenotypes?
So, oh my God, do you know that, image for It's Always Funny and like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's like this.
Oh yeah,
with,
that's
like,
my whole channel. Yeah, Charlie being schizophrenic.
That's me. Also, that's like what it would. I do actually want to do a YouTube video at some point where I talk about how evangelicalism split up the way that it did, because it is such a nightmare tree. So I'm going to do a little bit of that now as a treat.
Sure.
So first off, I would only talk about Protestant Christianity, because that's what I can talk about as like a knowledge expert. But there are like other, as you said, this appears in a lot of other religious traditions outside of Abrahamic faiths as well. So the biggest thing with evangelicalism, it is a term that is thrown around a lot, but it is actually a theology. And so, as you mentioned, like with Catholicism, faith by works, I'm not going to go into Catholic theology, but one of the biggest departures of Protestantism when it first split is, nope, let me restart. I'm going to talk about evangelicals only. That's too far back. So you had,
in the beginning, there was time.
In the beginning, the time. But you had like the Calvinists and Lutherans. You had kind of like the OG, more mainline Protestants, right? They were doing their own thing, the Anglicans, all of that. Evangelicalism was started because this guy, John Whitfield, when he started, and John Wesley started Methodism, where they basically created this idea of like justification and sanctification, where basically it's like the only thing that you needed to do to know that you were saved was to like accept God in your heart. And then your mission was basically to be as Christ-like as possible. I'm butchering this. Some people are going to come for me who like are Methodists or whatever. And they're like, this idea of like constantly trying to reach towards this like sanctification of being as perfect as possible, but you're justified, as in like, that you're saved, but it's your mission as a Christian to be as Christ-like as possible moving through the world. So when salvation becomes something that's like more like less earned and more faith-based, that allows for a lot of different interpretations of how that manifests, like what it means to practice and all of that. And so how Methodism and this evangelicalism started to spread in England and the United States was this first Great Awakening, which is what the Shakers were part of, where everyone was like, oh, wait, I can accept God. Oh, cool. I'm going to like freak out while it's happening. And so you started to get these like really emotional revivals where people were coming from Calvinist religions where it was like, you're damned or you're not, and you'll never know because God predestined it and you have no choice, which led to very anxious people. And so like it was this revolutionary thing that it was like, oh my God, within this faith, I can like make this decision. And so it led to this like really intensive energy and they were evangelizing, hence the name, which was trying to convert people because converts were possible now. Like people don't get that. Like, you couldn't convert. Like in Calvinism, like you were selected or not. And this is more true in like, America specifically, where Puritans were Calvinists and they were very strict, super not chill, cool people, very anxious people. So right, you have this first big movement, cool, it's over. Then you have the second Great Awakening in the early part of the 19th century. And that's when things get really crazy. And that's when you get the word that you're looking for that I'm making you wait 20 minutes to get to is like charismatic. So like, those would be charismatic traditions. There is a difference. So I grew up in a charismatic faith tradition, which was super fun and chill experience for me. And so charismatic is more of like a descriptor, right? That's when you're going to see more of the speaking in tongues. Maybe there's healings, but what that looks like is like basically this belief in like there are like gifts of the Spirit that God can give to people, and it's more of this feeling. There are actual, like Church of God, like there are also denominations that belong under something called Pentecostal, which is probably a term that you have heard. That is like a uniquely specific thing that happened in 19th century America, where they believe if you have never spoken in tongues, like you are not saved. So their salvation like hierarchy is different, where it's like you have to show one of the gifts from God to know you're saved. If you haven't yet, then you need to try harder and you don't know you're saved. Then there are other, like the wide stream neo-evangelicalism, as scholars would call it, but the evangelicalism we see now in America where people are like, come to the front and accept you're saved. And like an Elmer Gantry where he's like, I've been saved like 20 times, which I thought was really funny. Like that comes from this idea of acceptance. But because there was this kind of like personal interpretation, there's some of the hard lines like Pentecostals with the long hair where it's very much required. And then there's fringe offshoots like what I grew up in, which is we weren't Pentecostal, but we also weren't part of any mainline denominations. We were just like an independent church that was like in a gym and people were like doing exorcisms and speaking in tongues. And like, that's, you know, what I grew up in. So that's like, that's like called charismatic because it doesn't have a denominational like affiliation, but it's still characterized by this very ecstatic worship and this belief in some of these more like esoteric spiritual type things. When it gets to denominational splits and what that looks like, it gets very complicated and very fun, in my opinion. But I think that that's like basically the gist.
Is it like so is it like, is there a tradition, like did any of the modern sort of charismatic, I used to love watching these guys when I would like, I was such a bad college student at my first college, but like I would just like skip class and watch like televangelists.
That's crazy work, but nice.
I loved them. There was this one guy, I don't know, I think he got arrested. I think a lot of them got arrested.
A lot of them did. Was it Jim Baker and Tammy Faye?
It was not them. No, this guy, well, he had like a beard and he would like, I remember he did something. I don't know if so I'm not talking to anyone specific and I can't remember. So none of this is libelous. All this is alleged by other people. But I think he did this thing of like, where he'd be like, you know, it's like, oh, if you put $1 in your Bible, it's like 90 days, God will find a way to make that like $1,000.
Prosperity gospel.
Yeah, it was, I loved prosperity gospel. Loved that stuff.
So glad. I'm actually like, really annoyed with this to not be named TikToker who I do not know personally, and who is like trying to do progressive feminist Christian content, but I'm like, girl, you're just repackaging the prosperity gospel. She's like,
a lot of that.
manifest and like think about and like do things to take care of yourself. God will provide. I'm like, girl, you're just a televangelist. You're not critiquing evangelicalism in the way you think that you are. And there's so many ways in which and why I need to get better at having this come across on my channel, to be honest. Tried to been thinking of ways to do this. Unfortunately, evangelicalism, this is never was meant to be a Christian nation. It's not a Christian nation. So we're not going, when I'm saying this, it's not to solidify or confirm some Christian nationalist myth. But this country was founded, like, was shaped by these evangelical offshoots. And like that has bled into our popular culture and how we relate to each other and how we talk to each other. Like sometimes I even like how leftists will talk about, as a leftist myself, they'll talk about like punishment or retribution. I'm like, y'all sound like an evangelical. Like y'all are using the same narrative frameworks. That's why I studied religious literature, because I'm really interested in storytelling and narrative building and how those forms like are replicated and done in different ways. So I'm like, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I know it's easy for us like to watch Ann Lee and be like, or some people are like, you're glorifying a cult leader. And I'm like, she's you, babe. Like these people are not as like outlandish and far away as we think. And I think that like part of talking about the history, as much as I genuinely find it interesting and fun, is because it also like helps us understand why like America's in the mess that we're in and like why we're in it. We have a uniquely apocalyptic culture. Like there are certain things that an understanding of evangelicalism, even in secular spaces, helps like us to understand better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about that quite a lot. There's when we get into Elmer Gantry, I think that it says a lot of interesting things about that. But I think about that because like there's a lot of these old movies from the time that like there's this movie called Try and Get Me. I think it was also called The Sound of Fury from 1950. That's a film noir. It's like this is just a hustle culture guy. It's like he's just like there's so many of like these old things are just these other things. I think about that with the televangelism, but I'd be curious about like the influence of Ann Lee, or is it like, I think the term is carcinization, where it's like nature's repeated attempts to make a crab, right? Of like different things that aren't crabs, because a crab body plane is good for the ocean.
Yeah.
Everything becomes a crab. Are like, do modern charismatic people or like later charismatic people, did they like think of Ann Lee or any of the like of the Shaker movement as like, oh, like we're doing stuff like this, or did it sort of like independently, like we should just be ecstatic in sort of our worship and this will get people jived up?
The reason I'm laughing is because charismatic, especially Pentecostal, but charismatic traditions are markedly usually way more conservative, ironically, in their theology and like social positioning than non-charismatic traditions. So they're the reason why on YouTube I'll be like, heresy. I get comments that are like on the Ann Lee thing that are like heresy. I have a video that talks a bit more about this too that you can check out, where I was like, when religion in America took an emotional turn, because someone asked a similar question, is did the Shakers influence some of these like holiness movements that you saw like later?
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, yes and no. Like the Shakers were a product of this first Great Awakening, which was kind of what I was talking about earlier, where it was like, oh, I can have this individual relationship with God. And evangelicalism, even though we talk a lot about the anti-intellectualism, like Elmer Gantry does, it was very influenced by Enlightenment, like philosophy. Like they really incorporated that John Locke's idea about like this inner belief, and like they kind of combined it. And ultimately, what's going to happen when a lot of people can interpret things, a lot of people are going to spin off. But then they also all hate each other. And that's like was a really big issue in the 19th century after you had the First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening. Both of these were basically big revivals where everyone lost their shit and there were mass conversions. So like it's marked as a time and period where a bunch of people were converting to evangelical based faiths. And it was particularly very influential to American politics and like American culture. And then in the 19th century of this issue where Christianity schismed, everyone hates each other. And then the women I study who put out religious literature were trying to bring some of that, solve some of that like post 1950 kind of splits theologically. So they would hate them. They would think Ann Lee was like the hell from hell, especially because she was a woman who was asserting any form of religious authority. And I think one thing I do want to say, because just kind of lead into, there's so much more about Emily I want to say, but I think to get to Elmer Gantry, like, this was so good, this specific part where in the beginning, they're like, Sister Sharon, isn't she brilliant? Like the reporter guy says that.
Mhm.
And the man who's like her handler, he goes, I think inspired is a better word.
Mhm.
And so it's like, that is like the best way I can encapsulate how women can have power in conservative religious movements. You're never brilliant, you're always inspired. The source of the knowledge and the power is never yours, it's always coming from something else. And that's the only way it's
Fascinating.
acceptable. Anne Lee, though, she was like, this is me, guys. And so like that, I mean, like she was like, all power to God, but like it still was very much like her as the impetus. And when I heard that line, Elmer Gantry, I was like, yeah, okay, they get it. Like, I mean, that's what it has to be.
It's funny that I mean, that connects that. I mean, you see that obviously that I feel like there's some element of that probably in so many different fields. One of my pet things is how much I love Catherine Bigelow, and I feel like she's misunderstood a lot. Honestly, in a weird way, in a similar reason, like the thing about like, it's not that she's brilliant, she's inspired. Bigelow, I don't think gets enough credit for being like kind of a freak and like kind of being like a very instinctual, like she's both instinctual, but also like very cerebral. But a lot of the ways, like the joke I have about her is like some of the movies and the way she films men, especially, are like, it's like the most white woman. It's like the most paranoid white woman, conservative white woman thing like ever. Like that's like how it advertised like the Hurt Locker. The way she films like minorities in that movie is like, I don't like, you could argue like it's, I don't know what the right word is, but like she films them like she's a conservative woman walking through the city sometimes, is like the way she films like dangerous threats on the street. It's like she, like when you like, there's the camera angle she does and like these like really long lenses that she used. It's like, it almost feels like the experience of, not that I know this, but like from my women friends and otherwise, and, like whatever, it feels like the experience of like just the constantly being aware of threat, which makes Hurt Locker, in my opinion, so brilliant, because it's about a guy who's scared of getting blown up like 24/7, and like the PTSD and like the hyper that like in the hyper awareness that gets you in like Iraq. But like she was such a perfect director for that movie. But like there's like a weird way that people talk in general about like women directors and versus like male directors, especially about like it's a lot of it is like, you're not necessarily brilliant. It's like you're inspired, or you're courageous, or you're like you're good at like social stuff. Like she is not as good at like interpersonal relationships in a way that like historically, when Hollywood has made like room for a lot of women directors, or in other film industries had, they've sort of made it so that women can only do this. But she is like super good at action in a way that like typically only men have been allowed to do in other ways. So it's like, that's kind of fascinating. I didn't think about like, I don't know, that you can be inspired but not brilliant. That seems,
I mean, that is like really a linchpin in what my own personal scholarship and interest in is, because like, that's why I've been obsessed. I had to literally take a break because I was like, I can't become an Erica Kirk account. But like people are like, how is she a CEO and also preaching to be submissive? And I'm like, that's what my research is about. Like the idea,
let me tell you.
The idea, speaking charismatic traditions, and this kind of extends out, and the idea of telling testimony. So if you went to some of these evangelical churches, people might share their testimony of how they came to Christ or how they got through a hard moment of sin. And then, like that's a big part of evangelical tradition, but also like American narrative tradition. Women can't preach, but they can share testimony. And like there's so many ways in like conservative evangelicalism where those like they're still preaching, but because of this language, the power is always undercut, but it's still very much there. And that's why that book, The Power of God's Daughters and the Power of Submission, it's an older book, but it still gets to, it's an ethnography. It's of a charismatic women's Bible study group. It's one of the best books I've read on it. I think she's a little too sympathetic to them, to be honest. But besides that, she really gets at that,
Well, that's sort of like perfectly, honestly, like, that's sort of like perfectly, I think, encapsulates, like, it was not a surprise. Like, I was kind of surprised that like so many people were surprised about like her glow up post death. Because like, it's just like, to me, like, I didn't know how to express it, but like, I feel like what you just said sort of put it into the exact right words of like, it made total sense to me as someone who like grew up around a lot of conservatives and a lot of evangelicals. It's like, if it is a thing of like, she can't get power through like study, or can't get power through intelligence, or can't get power through this, she gets to get power through acquiring testimony. Well, what better testimony than my husband had the most public like death of like the last 5 years.
And literally too, like, I made a video and someone got mad and I was like, y'all are too precious about historical figures. But I was like, Erica Kirk's part of a long line of women in American religion who made their careers off of their husbands dying. Like, I list off like 8 to you right now. Sorry.
It makes total sense. Yeah.
Like, I can list off 8 different women. Like, literally, it's like their husband dies and they're like, woo! Like, I feel like it's
they
like
just go, yeah.
Ellen White, who founded the Seventh-day Adventists, her husband was like controlling her forever. He died, and suddenly all of the submission language disappeared from her writing. Like, you know, it's these funny things where like, because, so yeah, for one, she's part of like a long lineage. But also, this isn't my organization. This is my husband's organization. She, every single one of her talks, she never says like, she'll say our mission. She'll never say my. Like, she will never take ownership of it. And like, yes, you can talk about it, which I do in the one lens where it's coming from a place of like, I shouldn't put air quotes, oppression. And you'll see why I'm putting in air quotes in a second, of oppression, of where you're like, women aren't being taken seriously as leaders. However, it's what makes like white women so dangerous and so violent, because like, you have this authority you're constantly not taking accountability for having, and then you're weaponizing it through like storytelling, narrative, whatever it is. And then like, anytime someone calls you out, you can just cry, because you're in a society that is assuming that you should be emotional. And then it's like, don't hurt me, don't hurt me, don't hurt me. And like, that's what I'm also interested in, is the flip side is like, okay, there's a submission politics, the way they're not allowed to get power. How do they do it? Yay, girl boss. But then also like, how specifically have white women weaponized that and used it for violence? Because they have, like, that is like a lot of how it was used. And so I think that I have a lot of hard time sometimes with some of my academic lineage, whatever, like of women who've written about women's religious history before, where they'll get really annoyed with me or defensive, being like, why are you trying to undercut women's history when no one already cares about it? I'm like, because it's not an accurate history if the only people they were benefiting was other white women.
Yeah.
Like, we have to talk about both. Like, my feminism is that women also suck. And by taking seriously that women are also bad people, we take them seriously as a whole person. So it's a bit of an ethos rant, but like,
for
you
sure.
know what I mean? That's Sister Sharon.
Yeah.
Look at her go, girl boss. She also was like super aware she was scamming people for money.
Did any of them, and to be very clear, I nor Kristina is accusing Erica Kirk of this, for anybody who's trying to be out there, because like, I know there's conspiracy theories about this. Did any of them throughout history kill their husbands? Because like, that seems like it would be like, if I'm just like thinking about the incentives there of just like, if that's the way you acquire power, they're like, did anyone just be like, well, I'll just kind of, you know, because that's like also almost like it's not Munchausen, but it's like, I know it's like, that's the Munchausen by proxy thing, right? Of like, it's like, you want to have this sort of ill or whatever person, because it sort of gives you the attention and the power and like whatever else. So I'd just be curious, like, any big scandals in history like that? Or
God just provided for them because he knew it was their path. For what? No,
that's such a good,
I still can get into that gaslight mode I was raised to do.
Tactical gaslight.
Bro, it's scary, man. I don't, so literally I know what's going to happen. I'm going to immediately say no, and then someone's going to be like, actually, so I hope so. That'd be cool. If anyone does know, reach out to me. Yeah. DM me. I don't know anyone confirmed off the top of my head.
Do you suspect, like, is there anyone in history that, like, of the women that have sort of husbands died, you'd be like, this woman was so powerful and became so like, you know, like good at her stuff that like, I can totally believe it. It's like, I can't remember the sort of like, the JFK, like, so JFK is the example, I believe, like, like I don't know that it's conspiracy as like, I don't know how much is like people would call it a conspiracy theory or whether it's just like history at this point, but like the Warren Commission and the official story of JFK, in my opinion, was not like there's just no way. There's just no way. But like the thing that ironically almost convinced me the most was reading. There's a famous biography of Lyndon Johnson by Robert. I think it's Robert Caro or Caro. I never know how to say his name, but I think he's been working on it for like 50 years. Writes a book every 10 years. And it's like I think he's about to come out with the last one, hopefully soon, of just this huge long biography of Lyndon Johnson. And when I read the first one, it talked about, you'd probably love it. Because there's some overlap with like a lot of Texas history.
Yeah. It's
because you're from, yeah.
Johnson
Yeah. So it talks about him growing up.
I grew up.
Yeah. In the Hill Country. And
I grew up in
it's
Hill
actually,
Country.
oh, you've got to read it. You've got to read.
I grew up in Hill Country. Yeah. So
you have 100% got to read this because like he was like the king of the Hill Country.
Yeah.
When I read that, I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Like just by like I have like it doesn't go into the thing at all, but just by like who he was as a person, he absolutely would have done like it almost doesn't matter whether or not he would do it or not because he probably thought every day it's like how do I. Because he also had this big fear of dying early because all of the men in his family like died pretty, and he did die pretty early, I think in his 60s. So he was like, how do I be president before I die? And so it's a thing of like, after reading about him, I absolutely believed he did it. So I was just curious about like any of these like sort of women with their husbands dying who became religious leaders. Like, is there anyone that comes out like knowing what I do about her, like this queen would have done it?
Literally, so many of their husbands died in such bizarre ways that like, I feel like there were definitely some where like he disappeared.
Yeah.
And so like, I think maybe I wish I had, so I'm going to have to think about it. I have an answer. Just kidding. I have an answer.
Sure.
Probably Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of Christian Science. Okay.
Shout out there. They always have good film reviews. Christian Science Monitor. Shout out.
Yeah, they're fascinating group. I also I think I feel bad because they're a continuing religious tradition today. I think with Mary Baker Eddy, her husband died and she was divorced and started a religion, which is crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of phenomenal she was able to do that. I don't know. I feel like the first one they were divorced and then the second husband died. And again, that freed her up to go found this church and really fascinating history in person. But I do feel like Mary Baker Eddy, more than a lot of these women, they either felt like called to preach, but definitely didn't see themselves like founding. I think Mary Baker Eddy was like, I am starting a religion. Like I think she wanted to had the vision in the same way Erica Kirk, I think, has a vision for what her mini empire looks like. And so I think if anyone out of the historical figures was going to be plotting, I don't think she did. It would be Mary Baker Eddy. She had a gold encrusted room made that just said mother on it. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's honestly, I mean, it's like a thing of like, I don't want to spoil any part of Leave Her to Heaven for you because I want you to watch it. It'll be like this. We were talking about before the episode, but like, don't look up anything about it because like it'll just be so completely up your alley that it'll be like your favorite movie. But like, there's like a thought, like I always give like a lot of credence to like any of those like anybody who does like, let's say, difficult things, like in that of like, well, if they're going to be, if you only give people the ability to sort of acquire this power via like someone dying, then like, I'm not ever surprised when like people die more often than they should. It's like, it's like there's a couple things that happen in that movie that are like, of course, like that's like, now she was also in the movie. I think she's like she's got some some screws loose, so to speak. But also, it's like a thing of like you do also feel for her so crazy.
Yeah. And I will add as just the last thing with the Shakers too, because I think it was a point that you spoke to on the success of the campaign is like people I think focus a lot on the celibacy, right? Of like, oh my God, it's so crazy. People join. It's like people were dying, Kim. People were like had no money and no food in the American frontier and like the developing country. The Shakers like provided work and food and community, and like they are probably one of the most successfully like literalist religions. When they're like, we care about feeding people, they like actually did it. Like they really spoke to people's material condition.
Well, you know, we were talking. So, Chris, I about called you Erica, Kristina, before the show. We're
Terrifying.
talking. Yeah, yeah. There, but for the grace of, well, I guess they're. It's not the grace of God, but they're like you weren't gifted with the. No, I'm definitely taking this out. You weren't gifted with the with the. Okay, so Kristina and I were talking about the gender split on like our respective audiences as like TikTok people and whatever. So I was curious that when you said like, you know, like people were dying in the frontier with the celibacy thing, like, I don't know what the stat was like before a certain amount of time. Wasn't it like 20% of women died in childbirth? Like it was like the number one leading cause of death or something. So I'd be curious, like,
imagine it's such a higher percentage. I don't know if off the top of my head, but
yeah, like, was this like a particularly attractive to like women who were like, well, if I'm celibate, I don't have to fucking almost die every year.
I will say that unfortunately, which again, the thing is seeing this stuff on film for me is so exciting. I don't even want to critique it, but part of the girl bossification of Ann Lee in the movie is like the woman who's, you know, they have this scene with the mother where she's like, you've had these children, and she cries admitting she didn't really want to have all of them, and she's like, it's okay, you're here now. And they definitely make this like Shakers as this opportunity for physical autonomy for women, which I imagine for many absolutely, especially as like a reason to stop having kids, because a lot of times full families would join, but like the Shakers were not always the most gender equitable. So for example, like at least I think this was like early 1800s, this might have changed, but they would let men join the Shaker, abandon their family to join the Shakers, but they would not let a woman abandon their family to join the Shakers. The whole family would have to join. And like specifically, there's in the 1816 testimonies where people interviewed about Ann Lee, which also was just like trying to mythologize her and kind of clarify some thoughts and stuff. So like, you know, there's literally like a passage where Anne tells a woman not to leave her family to join the Shakers. The woman's like begging to join. And Anne's like, you must first, because they were like, oh, they're trying to break American marriages and Christian marriages. So they had to do a lot of like branding stuff to be like, we're not trying to break apart marriages, but also you shouldn't do it and join us. But yeah, so they weren't like, so yes, it was, but also it wasn't like total feminist utopia. Like a woman couldn't abandon her children and husband to join, but a husband could, a man could.
So I do have, I guess my follow-up question on that would be, out of curiosity, and this will sort of lead into Elmer Gantry. So one of the things that I thought Elmer Gantry was totally the opposite of.
They're such a crazy movies to talk about in comparison.
Yeah.
It's great, like, actually.
If Ann Lee was propaganda for Ann Lee and like made by an Ann Lee Stan Lee.
Stan Lee.
Yeah. Who is Stan Lee? I got to stim it every time I hear his name. If it was made by one, then Elmer Gantry is like, honestly, shockingly for 1961 or whatever it was, it's like one of the most cynical movies I've ever seen. It was 1960. In a surprising way, so much that they had to put a disclaimer at the beginning.
I gasped. I was like, the way in which I was like, there's a disclaimer. I was like, yeah. I'm probably blowing on my mic. I'm like, that like literally took me out. I was like, hysterical. Let's do this.
Thank you for because I'm going to add a list to my letterbox of like movies with the funniest disclaimers at the beginning, because there's also, that was almost for sure. I had to think of like, that was like done by the censors. There's also,
I get why they had to do it.
Yeah. I was surprised that they were able to show how cynical it was, but like Scarface was one of the movies, the original Scarface in like 1930, 31, little film history. They, great movie, Howard Hawks. I think it's like 31. But it was so, after the censors saw it, they thought that he made the gangster so cool that they insisted that he put a disclaimer in some like scenes. He was like, this guy is so, but it's so funny because it's like, you see this disclaimer of like, now don't do this, but like then it's like the coolest guy. Like he's just like I mean, he's got a lot of issues, but like it's such like a sort of romantic, sort of Goodfellas-esque portrayal of like being like this big time gangster. It reminds me actually another funny story. I don't know if it's going to date me, but I think this was probably pre-Katrina. I can't remember when exactly this was, but my friend in New Orleans told me that I think they still have drive-through daiquiri shops down there in New Orleans where you can like get a drive-through daiquiri, which to everybody else sounds fucking crazy.
Louisiana, yeah.
Yeah, in Louisiana.
I'm in Louisiana. I'm not like living there, but I do know about the drive-through daiquiri.
Yeah, the drive-through
Texas
daiquiri
has drive-through alcoholic place bar like as well.
It's crazy, and it's like, but these even are in New Orleans. It's not like they're not packaged just for the viewers out there. They're like in a styrofoam cup with a straw. And apparently my buddy told me down there that like the federal government threatened to withhold highway funding until they basically did a disclaimer of like, no, don't drink this in the car. Do not drink this in the car. And they weren't allowed to put the straw in. So they just gave you a straw and a cup.
Or if the plastic, how it is in San Antonio, so their phrase that they put the plastic sheath over the top of the thing, and they're like, don't take it up, don't move it.
That's what the disclaimers felt like to me.
No, it literally was, and I think I have some, because your questions you sent me. I think I do want to talk about the movie in general, but there were definitely some really unexpected connections between the two movies. Even though I knew it was going to be about these more like charismatic religious traditions, there were ways that I was kind of shocked by how that they were connected by, which we can either start with or we can move into later.
Well, but let's come back to that.
Yeah,
absolutely, because I do want to talk, and I might cut this out as well. But this totally could have been called just like this is like maybe like a foot away from being like a Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk thing. And we're back. So the thing I was saying before I got distracted about like Scarface and everything in the disclaimer was, so if I had to criticize, and this isn't to like, say that Elmer Gantry is, oh, one's good, one's bad. Because I genuinely thought both were valuable and good, but like, one thing I thought, that Anne Lee did not have that Elmer Gantry had was the cynicism. And I thought it didn't necessarily take a perspective on like, how were these people fallible, and like, in what ways did they like not live up to sort of their teachings or preachings? And so I was curious about like, when you said like the thing about the man versus the what, like women couldn't abandon their family, but men could. If I was making a religion and I wanted to have, and I was going to be a cult leader that wanted to have a lot of sex, I would be like, yeah, women, you can abandon your families, but men, you have to take care of them, which would maybe lead to a gender split. And so do it. So I'd be curious, like, are there any things of like any historical sources of like, were they actually following the tenets, or like, was it a thing of like, they were sinful and like, a couple people in Anne Lee sneak out and like, there's like that, they're sneaking out at the dinner or whatever. But I'd be curious, like, is that, like, are there sources that like I know that we don't have a lot of direct sources, but like were they living up to their tenets? Or
so we have like, and I really really like Clark Garrett's, I always switch them up. I really like Clark Garrett's book on the Shakers, if people are looking for like a historical source to read on it, because he takes the anti-Shaker text seriously, which I think they should be. So when Anne Lee was still alive, people were like publishing religious tracts, like just like little paper things and books that were like about how they were Shakers and how they left, and like kind of like a tell-all, just kind of how like people now, how like ex-Mormons go on and get millions of followers from talking about that stuff. I have a whole other opinion on ex-evangelical and like profiting off of leaving religion, but whatever. But so again, these are meant to like sell and be fanatical. This historian does a really good job of like holding together a lot of sources to figure out what we can take seriously. I mean, like, there is a strong possibility that Anne Lee was an alcoholic, especially later in her life. She was known to really like bourbon. Like, there are quite a few accounts of it. And also because like, she, I mean, like, it kind of makes sense historically for the time, and they would host a lot. They do mention this in the movie, and they're talking about the Valentin, like, Rathbun, thing, which is funny. His brother actually stayed as a shaker. So it was interesting family dynamics there where they were like, we've never danced naked. Yeah, that probably happened. Like one of the they have this like account where this person was like, I went to ask if this happened, and everyone was like, oh my God, of course no, that happened. And then they went and asked another shaker, and they were like, yeah, it did happen. Like, so there are a few things where it's like they weren't. I will say the celibacy thing they took really seriously. Like if people did fall in love, like if they did like they were asked to leave. The celibacy thing was taken really seriously. And also like pulling your own weight, like the hard work, like communal building like that. They literally like in Kentucky in like 7 years put up like 20 buildings. They were crazy.
Oh,
like
wow.
they were like machines. Like they were. So I think that when it comes to that, but also it's hard because okay, wait, I'm going to say this really quickly and then I'll go back to the Ann Lee time period. Shakers just had dipped as a processual theological religion. They had different eras, like depending on who was in leadership. So Joseph Meacham, like for 20 years, he's the one who was like, everyone must go in a line and we're very strict. And if you do not follow this, you're out. And then when he died, Lucy Wright took over for 20 years and she was like, guys, let's get back to vibes. And she oversaw when like they were at the height of their population. And so like, how strict the religion was did change with who was in leadership. When Ann Lee was joining, it's funny because there's people kind of joke about how like if there's people in a religion who are raised in it, people who convert to it are usually a lot more radical. Ann Lee, there's actually records of her being kind of freaked out by the American converts towards the end of her life. Like she kind of thought some of them were like, it was going too intense, which is why when she died, they were kind of like, let's get this more in order. So this is a really long way of saying like, I think that they did follow it, but not all of it was beneficial or good. Like they kind of show a bit of that in the movie where like the young girl's like, where's my mom? And she's like, you don't have a mother anymore. It's Mother Ann. But like you were completely, family structures were completely dissolved and you were punished if you acknowledged your inner family structure. Like gender, like it was gender equitable, yes, because they had the female male leadership section, but women did domestic work and men did physical labor. It was still very gender divided. So like literally the part that exhausted me the most in the movie is when they cut right before she dies and she's talking about like the importance of loving each other, and then she goes, and also take care of the earth. And I'm like, oh, come on. Like, I know that she actually did, like, ecological concerns were really important for the Shakers, but I was like, you guys are kind of pushing super hard that she was this perfect, great person. She was known for being, you can edit some of this down because I'm being repetitive, but like, she was known for being quite brash. Like, every account that I have found of what Ann Lee would say, I think it's hilarious. It's crazy what she would say to people. Like she would kind of just like show up places and just kind of insult you and then be like, come pray with me.
She sounds like a wrestling heel. Like that's honestly almost the way I would like do it is like she should have been like Ric Flair or like Andy Kaufman going from town to town. I don't know if you're, I always bring up wrestling references. I don't watch it, but I used to. Like when I was a kid. But just like a wrestling heel showing up like, okay, do you know who Ravishing Rick Rude is?
I don't.
Okay. That's not a flaw at all.
I do know about like wrestling heels and stuff. Like I do know about the general. Yeah.
So Ravishing Rick Rude in particular, his like had a thing. He would like, it's hard to just, it's so funny. You should, videos of it are good. He like, all these guys were, it was in the steroid era. All the guys were on steroids. He had like this big sort of mullet and mustache, and he would come with a robe, and before his matches and stuff, he would get in the ring and he would say like, "This is for all you fat sweat hogs and, you know, ugly women in Memphis, Tennessee." And then he would like take off his robe and then just start like gyrating in something. But he would go from town to town doing that, of like basically calling out the women in the crowd and doing it, and like and honestly the men too, like, you know, it's like, yeah, I want to show you ladies what a real man looks like. So it's, I'm almost picturing just Ann Lee doing that, like going from town to town, being like, you know, you guys suck, I'm the Messiah.
But they were also like super strategic about it. And one of my favorite Ann Lee stories is that so one of the next Harvard commune, one of the last ones she founded was in Harvard, Massachusetts, which isn't that far from where I'm at right now. And she founds a failed revival cult whose their own cult leader just died. And she came in and she was like, hey guys. And she bought their old house and moved in. And then not all of them like converted, but basically they believed they were the Irelandites. They have no relation to Ireland. The guy's last name was Ireland. I'm messing up the name, but he basically claimed he was immortal, and if you believed in him that you would be immortal, and then he died. And then they were like, what? Yeah. What do we do? And then she's like, don't worry guys, I'm here. Yeah. So she was like, it was business acumen. Like she believed, but like they were very strategic, and it was still
it's like acquiring a failing company's products. Like,
no,
literally. It's like an acquisition.
It was still a high control religion. Like,
she was a private equity queen. Except for
private equity
religion.
Queen. I mean, they built businesses. Like, it was still a high control religion, and like, there's only so much you can girl bossify high control religions. As much as the Shakers, I feel like, are the most worthy of girl bossification. I use that term a lot, and I really maybe shouldn't in my research.
Love it.
It's such a good term to talk about, like how to take something and to make it like, boo, especially when it comes to like women, because so many people do it, and it's such a fascinating thing.
I'll have one. I got one of the best comments I've ever seen. It was on, because you brought girl. It was on my Girl Boss O video versus O really video. I love that video. Shout out me. But this lady just commented and said,
that's what's on my content.
I had to come back here and explain that this breakdown inspired me to such a new level of understanding that I broke up with both my partners and embraced the fact that I might be a lesbian at 34. I don't really know how to explain that because nothing here inherently has anything to do with this except, and then it just ends. But I was like, I was just like, go off, queen.
Go off, queen. Good for you. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, good for you.
I love it when art speaks to people.
Yeah. I would say, so to wrap up on not necessarily wrap up, but like on the Anna Lee, the other, like, I feel like I would have liked a little bit more perspective, like enjoyed it as a movie. And I think it was good to get sort of the ecstatic view of it and find as a thing. I think like if I wanted to see another Anna Lee movie, I would have liked one that was more, sort of like took a POV of why she did. Cause I don't necessarily, aside from like the pure raw, ecstatic aspect of it, I don't think that I got as much about, like, I would have loved, I was getting really excited. This sounds terrible. I was getting really excited as her kids died, but like as her kids died and like whatever, and especially the BDSM spanking stuff.
What? I don't know what the fuck that was about. I'm going to be so real.
Is that on the sources?
No,
or is that...
I don't know what the fuck that was about. I literally was about like, and in the beginning of the movie, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to hate this so much. I was like, I'm going to hate this so much. And then it got better. And I was like, I think it was like I think it was the director.
Shout out my friend Kate, Katie Asaurus, the kink and ADHD and autism influencer.
Yeah.
But I immediately texted her afterwards. I was like, don't look up Anna Lee, but go see Anna Lee because you'll like at least a couple parts. Like you'll find it interesting.
And I'm not trying to be anti-kink here. People do what they want to do. The reason why I'm annoyed is because I think it was the director's way of like trying to be like, see how oppressive it was. Because otherwise, I don't know what that was. Like, I think she was just trying to emphasize. Anna Lee in the records that we have spoke very highly about her husband. Obviously.
Well, it seemed like she was like getting him to do it. Like it seemed like it was like a consensual. Like I felt like it was like she read about it and was like, ooh, interested in it. Like at least I thought, and that she's like, can you spank me?
I read it as like because it was, there was definitely a sex scene later where she was like not into it, and so there was definitely that narrative about that. He did come to America with her, by the way, and stayed longer than the movie showed. He did leave, which makes sense.
Did he bang a sex worker right in front of it? Because that was also just like
no idea what the fuck that was about. There were like I again.
Well, now I don't want to say those are the things I like in movie. I mean, I'll watch any movie, but like I thought those were like, I was like, okay, we're gonna get some more characterization and like just some more like I thought they were gonna tie the psychological aspects of like being a mother / possibly doing like a dominant submissive, like, because if you're telling people what to do, I feel like you're doming them on some level. And like,
like, I mean, everyone had to call her mother and they all confessed their sins to her. Like she was not a chill person.
So
like,
that's why I was like, I would have liked to see more connection between like that and then like the idea of her being a failed mother. I thought like it is a very easy line to draw of like, oh, she was she, not that she was a failure as a mother, but like her motherhood failed because her kids died, unfortunately. And that led her to like, you know, maybe like do this like thing where now she's the mother to everybody. Between that, I was just hoping like I would have loved to just stay on that. And also, even if it's faked, just to be, because actually one of the recommendations I'll give at the end, because it has to do with home and BDSM and religion, is a Secretary. I don't know if you've ever seen that one with.
I haven't. No, I haven't. I've like, because we started collecting
another
old
one
DVDs.
right up your alley.
It's I know. I have it on DVD now because I got it like at a Goodwill, so I'm excited. I think they did not do a lot of like, it was very much about the experience, and now that I know more about the Shakers, like I'm happy that that's what they did with it. But yeah, it leaves, and that's why I think like people have been searching out like my TikToks because they're like, what? Who? Where? And the thing I was going to ask you is like, how did the script feel to you? This is my last questions, and then
it wasn't really. I couldn't really hear half the dialogue. It felt like, which I loved. Honestly, I love that. Like, so that's the like I'm like I never get the hate for like Christopher Nolan when he does like, because his dialogue's not the strongest part of his movies. Yeah. So like I didn't think I needed to hear much of the dialogue. So and, like, the fascinating thing
so a lot of like comments that I've seen are that the dialogue was stilted. This was like by far the craziest choice in the film for me that one would not know unless they were a musician. 80% of Amanda's dialogue is straight from the 1816 testimonies, no changes at all.
Really?
Like, and also of other extraneous characters. And I was like sitting there like, y'all, which I was like, I appreciate that y'all appreciate the history, but like you could change up the wording. So there's like a few moments where like the defense they make of like, we only simply took off our petticoats and danced, and that's why they thought we were naked. Word for word. Like, that's why it felt like sometimes they were just turning around and saying like a quote because they literally were. And it was written in narrative form. And I guess they were trying to use like Amley's words only, even though obviously written 40 years later. That was a fascinating choice. If I ever got a chance to interview the director of this movie, I'd be like, why? I'd be like, I'm really curious on that decision. I'm not against it. It's just, it was fascinating to me.
Reminded me of The Crucible, that part, and I wasn't sure, like, I don't know if you ever seen with Daniel Day-Lewis.
I haven't seen it. I wrote
it's good. It's I think you'd like, I mean, it's a fine movie. It's not as good as like some of his other stuff, but I think it opens up with like they're dancing naked in the woods from what I remember, and like then it's the witch trials, I believe, something along those lines. So Elmer Gantry finally, because I think I really loved it. I can't believe it's like 20th on Burt Lancaster's like Letterboxd like popularity list. I can't believe this movie isn't more well known. This is a wild fucking movie.
It's a wild fucking movie.
What did you think? Yeah.
I mean, it was insane. Like, I was like, this is crazy. I think that like it made a lot of connections. That my whole thing that I love to do with American politics right now is people are like, this is just happening because of the Trump like administration. I'm like, one, now we can be like, Elmer Gantry is my new favorite midpoint. And then two, pointing to the 1850s and stuff. And then to the 1780s, like it's been, developing.
Calls from inside the house.
Exactly. Yeah. It's been happening forever. But like, I mean, they were showing the like business transactions lining up with the church development. Like they really hit a lot on the head. I will say, who was the actor you said who played Elmer Gantry?
Burt Lancaster.
Holy shit. He played a really convincing, scary guy.
Fucking maniac.
The baring of the teeth. Crazy. He's a very good singer. That was the thing I was also surprised by was the music connection between the films.
Yeah, same. I wasn't expecting that. Probably my favorite scene is when he goes into the black church and like that's like just a kind of like menacing. He's a fucking demon in this. Yeah, and honestly, they kind of hint about it like slightly in the movie, and like if you don't know much about Burt Lancaster, he was a former circus performer, so like that was also like that's how he got his thing, and he was known. He was like the first guy, like one of the first guys who he was one of the early guys, along with like Kirk Douglas. He reversed
himself as a clown in the movie.
Yeah. So he began, I believe, as a trapeze artist. And then so he's like of that lineage. And then he was known, like he was always like in phenomenal shape. And like there's like one or two lines in the movie where it's like, oh, they talk about like his body, or like it's sort of alluded to. That was something like you'd almost have to know about Burt Lancaster, that like underneath the
that
clothes,
makes more sense.
he's just fucking like, he's just like like he's like steroids jacked under there. Cause like he just always kept in phenomenal shape.
That's crazy.
But it led to him, like he also like, he's just bounding. He's just like a little ball of energy throughout the entire thing. He plays, this is not even his scariest. The horrifying part about he plays the scariest guy, most menacing guy, I think, in movie history, in the movie Sweet Smell of Success, where he plays a gossip writer, this gay gossip writer who's like has kind of incestuous relationship with his sister, that he's trying to like control her, but also he's trying to like dominate like gaily everybody in New York City, because like he can ruin their careers or make their careers. And yeah, he has like these horn rim or like these like classic 50s glasses that are like, that they actually they made him like really strong, and then they Vaselined him up so that his eyes couldn't focus. So he has like these huge black eyes in it, and he's just like all wired underneath the thing, like telling people that he's going to like ruin their careers and end them.
It was a fantastic performance. Like it was an incredible, great voice, by the way. Speaking of with singing, I was shocked by just, I think that's
him, but I'm not sure. I never know if they're dubbing or not. But whoever has it,
whoever has it, good job. And I think that like I was trying to figure out how I felt about the scene of him in the black church, or what I thought it was functioning as. And I watched it with my partner, who also studies religion, and I was asking him about it. And his point was like, it was like, I think emphasizing how much of a chameleon he was when it came to understanding what religious cultures wanted what from him to show he belonged. Like there, he could not go in and start preaching, because they'd be like, white man, why are you even here? And he's singing the song to be like, oh no, I know the song. And they're like, okay, you can stay. Where in, the white tabernacle / revival situation, it's him in the Bible and the salesman and like that thing, and how much like he really adapts. Like, and I think there's a lot of that, they clearly leaned in on the Satan imagery on him too, where he's in the darkness taking her under the pier. I laughed out loud. I was like, oh my God.
I thought he was going to kill her. I thought he killed her at that point. I thought for sure.
Fascinating. I definitely knew she was losing her virginity, because I want to talk about like how they deal with that, because
I was like, he's about to choke her to death. I was like, he's about to choke her to death. And I thought after, it's like, he just killed her and he's going to take over her church. I thought that was going to be the thing of like, he was going to be like, oh, she drowned. Yeah, like I tried to give her a baptism and she drowned, and then he like tried to,
I knew it was going to be that, because she just went on this whole speech about her own self-empowerment. And I was like, they're gonna take it away from her. I was like, they're gonna take it away from her. And then like she literally has sex, and then she's like the dumbest woman that's ever lived. Like that's like my main thing, which I'm like, I guess it's good to show her whatever these narratives about like how a lot of times in American religious history, women can only have religious power if they were like celibate or like completely pure.
That's a great, I didn't even think about that.
And like literally, because when she meets him, she's like, oh, I'm going to use you as a tool. Like she literally yells at him. She's like, like, no, you're my instrument for God. You're not being used by God. I'm God using you. Like basically is what she says. And she even makes a joke of him standing at the thing being like, oh, are you plotting the takeover? Like she seems very aware of the power dynamics, where she lies, like when she chooses to stay silent and like let him speak for her versus when she speaks up. Like they show her as like this very knowing thing, where she shows genuine belief, but she's also incredibly strategic. She has sex, stupidest woman that's ever existed in the whole world.
Yeah, that's like Samson. Is it Samson getting the hair cut off or whatever?
Yeah, it's funny. I hadn't. But then she starts going by Katie Jones again, right? That was her non-profit name. And I thought that the naming was the most interesting connection between the two for me. Because you have two women who brand themselves as female prophets and take on a new name, which is a thing that happens a lot in women's...
Also a very wrestler heel thing to do.
Yes. Yeah. Where it's like, oh my God, I wrote it down. What was it? It was like Sharon the Falconer. And then Ann Lee was Mother Ann / she also had people call her Ann the Word.
That's a sick name.
Yeah.
I love that.
And the word.
That's a great wrestler name.
Right?
And the word, yeah.
Which is, she was supposedly pretty sensitive about being illiterate. So she was like, I don't need her. I am the word.
Yeah.
So
that's so sick.
And so it's like, also Jemima Wilkinson's became the public universal friends. There are a lot of like women who do this kind of renaming thing. And what's fascinating is like, sorry, I'm jumping into this.
No, go ahead.
Fascinating to me and what I thought was like, this is an insane thing to say. But like, funnily enough, I feel like Sharon the Falconer's story just proves Anne Lee right. Like, if she had just stayed celibate, she would have stayed in control of her church and it wouldn't have lit fire and she wouldn't have died inside it. Like, literally.
I kind of agree.
It's like the pinnacle, like the shifting point is like letting him in and to take that power and that emotional thing. And I was like, girl, don't prove Anne Lee right. You have to be celibate.
Did you see that coming? Because I gotta say, that was one of the most shocking things, scenes. I did not like, as soon as I saw the guy flick the cigarette, I was like, oh, I can't believe they're gonna do this.
I was like, oh my God. I didn't see it coming, but I was like, are they gonna do it? And then I was like, they're gonna do it. And then it was really happening and she wasn't moving and I was like, she's gonna die in the church. I was like, she's going to die in the church. And I think another shot that I thought was incredibly done, but also crazy, was when they were like, I don't remember where they were, but it's like, she's having this moment and it's like Sharon. And then it's like, what is it? Oh my God. What was the Repent?
Yeah.
With like the shadow flashing. It's ultimately always the woman's fault. So that's another thing too. But yeah, I hated Elmer Gantry, but he was a fantastic character.
Yeah.
He got away with everything.
And then he like, you can tell he's just like, at the end we were laughing. I watched it with my housemates, just 3 dudes. Like it's a horrible story, but like at the end we were just like, we just knew exactly what he was going to do. He's like, oh, he's going to go on a bender. Like, it's just like, this is a chapter of his life that he's just closed. Like, this woman's dead. All the massive like impact this had, both like her stuff and just like the stuff they did. But he's just like, yeah, well, hey, that was crazy. And then time to drink for 3 months. Yeah.
And it's like this was like a phase of life for him. But I think actually, like, as much as that was frustrating because of what I said, like, that's such an accurate depiction, especially of just like, I feel like narcissistic is thrown around so often now, but that man is a narcissist. But that's like what actual narcissists do, where they're like, oh, I see this person who's really fascinating because everyone is giving them the attention I'd want. How can I like weaponize that for myself? Okay, I'm bored now. Bye. Like, you know, and I like even the way they talked about Sharon towards the end in the beginning with the reporter guy. Lots of thoughts on his character. Where in the beginning where he was like, she's brilliant. And then at the end, he goes, she was a whole lot of woman. And I'm like, she went from brilliant to a whole lot of woman. She really had this like
your point.
All into like humanity, but also like stupidity. Which was
she
really
became a woman and therefore stupid and dead and no longer brilliant.
That's the name of this. She became a woman, therefore stupid and dead.
Oh, I mean, like that, not her fault, but you know,
that's the summary.
The one guy she let her guard down to trust, eventually was also, just the worst possible. I mean, but that's
she saw who she was at the beginning, and I guess it's just dumb woman brain. I don't know why. Like, again, it's the movie, it's whatever. I'm just like, it is interesting.
It's a thing in girl bosses. This is my very gender reductionist theory of like this is my theory, because I watched the original Gaslight, the British Gaslight, where the term came from. Right. And it crystallized it because the guy who solves the crime is an oaf. So I'm gonna do a video on this, but like oafs, like girl bosses should make friends with oafs, or like women should make friends with oafs, because oafs can sniff out, we're the natural enemies of like hucksters and like of Elmer Gantry types, of like deceivers and like gaslighters. We are the natural enemy of gaslighters because we can do nothing for them. We're either fuck it up because we're stupid, or we can't do anything. We have no practical skills. So it's like they have no use for us. So we can sniff out that they're being a gaslighter, and we could like help the girl bosses. I think it's just like, it's a thing of like, you know, you know, I think for someone honest, and this is just like a woman thing, but anyone who sort of like learns to put up like as much of a shell and as much of like a constructed persona as she does, the only one who's going to like sort of be let into the inner circle is someone who's just going to like endlessly try until he does. So it's almost like a statement of like faith in her and like love in her, that like he's the one who's willing to like put himself through all this stuff until finally she gets to guard down, because like he knows when he lets her guard, when she lets her guard down, that's when he's got her.
That's when he can. No, and I think that that's also like, I for a long time was pretty naive about like people really will put a lot of effort and energy just to take someone down. You know what I mean? And you're right. I should give more credit to her, because he does just wear her down. Like, and that does narratively make sense, because that man was around for like a year plus doing this, like full time, or I don't know how much time passed. Whatever.
It's the most cynical part of the movie, right? Because it's like the one bit of humanity she has is like, oh, maybe on some level, like she actually does believe. I believe that she does believe very strongly, and like at least part of the stuff she does. She's also like, the movie shows so brilliant. She knows how to like make a business out of it,
right?
And like she knows how to be a girl boss about it. But she does have this little inkling. But that's the thing that kills her. It's just like that she, It's almost like a lesson of like, it's like don't. Anne Lee was right, and also like just don't let your guard down.
Anne Lee was right. Don't let a man in. He'll take your power. It was a funny thing to like have the second movie, which I knew would be like in conversations, be like, wow. Anne Lee would watch that and be like, told you. I think that was funny to me. I will say, as a side note, the costuming was really fun. Sharon's outfits were crazy. I kept like
she was like Jackie Kennedy in some of them. Like that's why,
And it was interesting though, because when she lost Sharon the Falconer and was Katie Jones for a bit, not really preaching, they took her out of wearing white. She like wasn't wearing white anymore, and then they put her back in white, like at least a cape when she was like trying to get back to it, and then fully in white to die as her dumb little angelic self. One thing that was so interesting to me, because you're at the 1920s. I mean, this is about fundamentalism, which is a specific.
I was going to ask you.
I can go into that too.
It's about, what was the lady behind it? It was like loosely based on
McPherson. Well, no, what's her name? Is that it? Yeah, it is. I'm so smart. Amy Seymour McPherson.
Were you familiar with her before your?
I was. I mean, so I have to be like, now that I have more free time post my degree was mostly focused, like I'm really up to date on super contemporary stuff, and 18th, 19th century, 20th century is my weaker point, but I know like the big hitters, and she's one of them. She founded the like Foursquare Church, which is like a really big Pentecostal, huge. She created the first mega church, which is crazy.
That is wild.
I wish I like had time to look more into her and the way.
Thank you, Amy McPherson, for who's the guy in Texas with the big ass church? Joel Osteen. Yeah, thank you. So for all like, I think is that the biggest one?
Is it the biggest one? I mean, like
probably it's got to be up there. It's like an old stadium,
the biggest and long lasting. I would definitely give that for number one spot. But I mean, it depends on if you count the branches, because Hillsong is also crazy. That's global.
Oh, I forgot about that. Is that the Bieber one?
Yes.
That's the Bieber one. Okay. Yeah.
And like so much of like Christian music production is like totally owned by them now at this point.
So she was a Pentecostal evangelist and media lawyer for Wikipedia, media celebrity in the 20s and 30s, and she was the most publicized Protestant evangelist, surpassing Billy Sunday and other predecessors of her day.
She had a radio show. Like she was, I mean, if evangelicals have been on top of it about one thing, they're always the first to try out a new media form. So like with televangelists, with radio, with like newspaper and articles and TikTok. That's why we have all these Christian fucking influencers. They're always ready. And she also wore these like insane outfits. When you like look at the photos of her online. But the movie, and it makes sense with the 1920s, what I thought was such a fascinating historical time capsule of it. 1920s, you have fundamentalists, which believed that like, you know, the Bible was just a literal translation. And so there's nothing you can know about it. People like think that's all evangelicals. It's not. It's a specific sect. With the Scopes trial, there was like this whole trial about evolution and all this stuff doesn't matter. Basically,
it's right near me. right down the road.
Fundamentalists were if you look at the Scopes trials, very interesting. Fundamentalists were basically just like shamed out of public society. Like people were like, oh, good, we got those weirdos out of American culture. And people thought they just went away, but they just went underground and they became more powerful. And then in the 1950s and 60s, with Billy Graham coming out of nowhere and everyone loving him, in the 1960s, people are like, what the fuck? I thought we got rid of these people. So it makes sense. It's like the perfect time for this movie to also come out because they're having.
They heard about school integration, came back, right? Like, wasn't that like one of the big stories alongside of it? Was just like they were against the school integration because we're religious schools.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. And that's another thing is they always have to have a villain. And so it was race for a very long time. And then they were like, oh shit, public tide is turning. We can't keep being racist. Guess we'll have to be homophobic. And then that was their new thing. And then it was like, guess it's got to be abortion. And so it's always changing. But like, that's why I thought it was really interesting this came in the 1960s because people at that time were having to deal with like the Billy Graham of it all and like it becoming this huge thing again of this like kind of anti-intellectual impulse of Christianity. And so it makes sense why they also had to have this huge disclaimer. I'm sure I would love to research how much like it was watched at the time, like what the feedback was. I'm really curious.
Same. Yeah, I'm surprised it's not more well known. Like it's like it doesn't seem to be. I think it has like 10,000 logs on Letterboxd, which is just like Ann Lee. I mean, it's more recent, but it has like 95,000 or whatever. It's just like
I think
it's kind of crazy.
Stuff. I think the way in which I think some people felt uncomfortable watching Ann Lee is like how I felt uncomfortable watching this while watching this movie because like for me I'm like it's really jarring to see people completely also because like I grew up in that so like the like Elmer Gantry was like closer to what I grew up in with Ann Lee. I was like musical I can separate from this emotionally and with Elmer Gantry I was like I've seen that happen like I was like that is my lived experience in some parts. But it was the movie.
It felt so relevant. Like if this came out tomorrow, I'd be like, wow, they really got their thumb on the pulse of society, right? Like in terms of
I mean talking about the business stuff, talking about like different gender dynamics, talking about like
media representation of it.
Even like there have been different preachers that have been canceled from ranging from like, pedophilia to like just adultery. There was like a really famous televangelist, Jerry something that I'm forgetting his name of, who got like exposed for a long-term affair. And so like even the woman who was the sex worker exposing him and then retracting the statement, that has happened so many times with like important religious leaders in evangelicalism. Like it was so like it was fantastic in that way, but it also made me so uncomfortable because he played the villain so well. Like he was so unnerving. Like he was so unnerving. But like, good job. But like,
it was what a performance. I mean, she's really good too. Jean, I think it's Jean Simmons.
She played it really well as well. But she.
I also sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say she played it really well. Of like the, I think it's hard to convey someone acting submissive but seeming in the know. Like I think she did a good job of like these subtleties, but also if you're not like looking for that, it kind of just seems like she's just sitting there. But I feel like she did a good job with the role.
For sure. And we're back. This is gonna be funny. I'm gonna do a bunch of sound effects or something.
Yes.
So you said earlier the newspaper reporter, who is played by Arthur Kennedy. So he is like one of the reasons I also, when I saw him, anytime I see Arthur Kennedy movie, I'm like, I got to get this movie because he's one of my favorite actors. He is one of like, in terms of vibes, like he has some of the worst vibes ever in every movie he's in, including this one. So this is one of the nicer this is one of the nicer characters he has. Where he's like, there's any other movie he's in, it's just like, the vibes on him, like he's so good at playing. He's like a very famous theater actor. He was like one of the original people in like Death of the Salesman. He's like and he was like mostly a supporting actor in the movies. Interestingly, the other time he played a journalist, probably his most famous other movie was Lawrence of Arabia, where he plays a similar journalist who's like chronicling Lawrence. He's like, that's like his sort of role in that. But so I'd be curious about, your thoughts on his character, because like it felt like that one felt like both of a previous time when we had like functioning newspapers, but also that like the fact that like I was like, oh man, it's like what a crazy time. Like I guess it was like long ago when you could like write a newspaper article criticizing someone and have that be like the public tide turn against it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought they subverted that brilliantly in a way that's very modern, because like, oh my God, they're doing the same thing now of just like he wrote this article, but it's like, no, you got to give us equal time, and we'll just, we're going to like evangelize and be on the radio show for like, 2 weeks or however long they did. And it's like the first sort of like Christian, like it felt like it was like I don't know, Fox News or like all the Christian
Well, and
media stuff.
Amy, the actual historical figure, which I'm like, damn, they took it away from Sharon.
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Because I just noticed on her thing, spouses: Robert Semple, 1908 to 10, his death; Harold McPherson, 12 to 21, divorced; David Hutton, 31 to 34, divorced. So we got like another. That's just fascinating for a.
I need to like I really should have done more research on her before you talked, but also I can give a more genuine movie reaction without knowing too much in depth about it. Because I'm curious if like she had an Elmer Gantry type figure in her life or not. I'm very curious about that. But Amy was like, she was like the first like televangelist radio. So like that was her. So it's cool in the movie that they showed that kind of like pivoting to radio. When it comes to the character, he had like, I think honestly one of the bigger character arcs in the movie for me, because he went from like, she's brilliant and like, yeah, I'm laughing at this, but overall I can't help but be kind of fascinated and impressed by her. And then I thought this was fascinating choice. And of course this is only going to stand out to me because of what I do. She is like basically a female preacher, right? He is the only character, and he's not religious. He's the only one who's explicitly not religious in the film. He is the only character who weaponizes scripture against her, saying that women aren't allowed to preach. And I thought that was a really interesting choice. And it still happens now where it's like people will use scripture they don't believe in to try to discount people who are in those religious faiths, which is like, I'm not saying it was bad or good, but for him, I was like, you prick. And also it's like fascinating. He was the only one who vocalized that, and he was awful to her. Like it was fascinating because it was such a transition, but then it like at the end was very buddy with Elmer Gantry, was just kind of helps like him. Yeah, he does help him.
That made total sense, knowing Arthur Kennedy's like history, like his characterization of like of his roles of like, oh, he's like vicariously living out through this other shithead. Because like he could have been, his character, like his like persona on screen could have been Elmer Gantry. So I was like, I took it as just like, oh, he's like, which also made him a shit kid. Like it's like there's a very, no one is spared in this movie. I don't think anyone comes out looking great.
I literally wrote his character, what a shithead, in my notes. That's literally all I had on him but I think it was cool also because people would just follow them around and like write about it. So also another fun historical kind of lens onto, the revivals and stuff at that time, especially like people were really fascinated / freaked out by the evangelicals, like Billy Sunday, like all of that. And another thing too that I, as a nerd, thought interesting that Sharon the Falconer and Elmer Gantry represented is in these fundamentalist circles. They're coming out of the 19th century, like feminization of Christianity, the very soft, loving kind of motherly view of Jesus, which I feel like the Sharon Falconer shows. And then you have the fire and brimstone masculinity. Look how strong I am. Like, what Billy Graham ended up doing through like the Elmer Gantry. And Elmer Gantry kills the sentimental, like soft female type of Christianity, which is like, I have a video on that of how the fear of feminization shaped American Christianity, but like they also showed that, which there was a really big transition in the early 20th century. And so it was like really interesting to kind of see that also. I wonder how like aware of what they were doing with that dichotomy. So,
I'd love to read the book. Because I think it was based on a Sinclair Lewis book.
In the book, I was looking at it because it was written in 1927. What's really interesting to me as like a quick, I mean, I hate that the AI summaries just like pop up immediately, but sometimes it's helpful. Where one of the things that I thought was interesting is the reporter character in the book was Elmer Gantry's college roommate. So that gives like a lot more like long-term relationship.
Interesting.
Which I feel like would change. Also in the book, it said that he marries another woman of the congregation for like clout instead of her. So it's interesting that they made their relationship romantic. That was all I saw. I don't know the rest of it. So I was like, those are the like few pinpoints. But yeah. So I thought his character was similarly evil, but in a very like evolving way, where initially he was like, oh, I'm here for Sharon Falconer, and now I've turned against her, and I'm just here to watch you, Elmer Gantry, burn it all to the ground.
Yeah. He seemed like he loved the drama of it, which I think like, newspaper, like media, like we love like we love a story of like, I mean, also it's kind of the thing of like everybody's like, to bring up the Charlie Kirk thing again, like famous last words, but like 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 every like he's become like, in a way, like I'm not saying this is like, I don't like, I generally, I feel like have a bigger heart than that's a fucking all like arrogant, like I'm not saying bigger, but like I generally am like less like punitive towards like my enemies or whatever than like many other people, in terms of like, I'm never rooting for like anybody to get killed, and I wish we could all live in peace, happiness, love, but whatever. But like on some level, it's like I don't feel bad for him, because like I feel like he would have been the one, like if someone else had died, he would be the ones exactly doing what everyone's doing to him. But also it is just kind of like fucked up how like it just become a meme, and like on both sides of like, there is like just something sort of like, I don't think it's a good sign of our society. Not that I'm against or pro anybody doing it, do what you want, let 1,000 flowers bloom. But like he, like within like 2 weeks, it's just like, now there's just like AI videos of like him and Epstein and Kanye and everywhere, and his wife's like, going on to like fireworks at a convention and everything. There's something like just dark about the entire thing of like, just on like a human to human level. And obviously I probably disagree with him on every single possible thing whatsoever, but like there is that thing of like, I think that it's fascinating you bring, I didn't even think about that, of like, the degree to which he, like Kennedy's character and everybody else even, almost has like just sort of this sort of lurid fascination with like, we love him, we hate him, we love him, we hate him, of like this kind of cult of celebrity is very, I don't know. It says great stuff about us.
It's and then it's fascinating too, because I think as the power shifts over the film, where people's devotion goes and how it's expressed changes. Like with Sharon Falconer, like they're all very interested and devoted in her, and like, it's a little freaky and there's weird shit happening, but like it's not like inherently violent. I'm not trying to be like, if a woman led it, like I think Erica Kirk's pretty evil. Like I'm not saying that is like the differential, but in the movie, like when Elmer Gantry starts to take over, like when his name's added under the sub banner, and then it's just him. It's interesting how the vibes shift, like with the people who are like supporting, and I think it shows less about maybe them as individuals and more about this is such a like basic take, but in America, we love a celebrity. We love a presence. We love a vibe. And even if that vibe, Donald Trump, is making everyone's life and existence marginally worse, they're like, oh my God, at least he's funny. And I'm like, guys, that's not what we should be taking away. Like, that's said on both sides of the political spectrum. They're like, at least he's entertaining. And I'm like, that is what we have come to.
Like, what a limited amount of hope. I totally agree with that. I mean, the college kids coming in like hooping and hollering, like they were there for the spectacle of it, and then at the end, like they almost beat her like Ann Lee, like they were trying to like they bring in like the eggs and the clubs and everything.
They like it's fascinating, and I think a woman can never leave a movie with power. I was like saw a movie with I saw like, and then Crouching Tigers,
Hidden Dragon.
Yeah. I watched it in theaters with three of my friends who I was in divinity school, and the movie ended, with spoiler, her killing herself, jumping off the cliff. And I was like, and that's womanhood. And they're like, oh my God. Like, they were like,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm like, so much of these narratives of women having power, whether it's good or bad, I'm not moralizing it. It's just more of like, there's a pretty similar narrative arc that's going to be happening.
Yeah. Well, this is, yeah, totally. I mean, this is a good time to get into Rex as we wrap up, because that was actually one of the things on my channel that, that's sort of like one of the, things I've perpetually talked about is like the idea of this genre I call like monster mellow horror, which is like the universal monster horror, like Frankenstein, Dracula, and all those things. They have the same ending as women and queer people in the 40s and 50s, because you can't show deviant lifestyle, and being a powerful woman is a deviant lifestyle. And this is another movie. There's probably like 8 or 9, like when you said, like there's 8 or 9 women that have like had dead husbands throughout the years. There's like probably 15 movies that have either gay guys or like gay women, gay men, monsters, or women of any kind, just burning to death in a structure. It's like the most common end. There's probably like, I'm just like, they burn up the Invisible Man. They burn up the guy in Warlock, his body. They burn up in Rebecca, not to spoil it, but she sets the estate on fire. It's like just such like a common. So I was like, that it's like even still with that, it was so shocking. But yeah,
no,
God forbid
I
a
was
woman
like,
have power.
God forbid, and let her burn in the flames with it. That was crazy. I wasn't expecting them to do that, to kill her off. You know, she didn't get to make her mega church. So sad.
Yeah, she should have been the first Austin.
She should have been able to have her mega church.
Okay, so yeah, all those movies are great. And then any of the Douglas Sirk, well, there's a whole bunch of home and domesticity ones I'll send you, but Sweet Smell Success, The Swimmer for Lancaster, which this movie could almost be a prequel to it, Secretary. Midsummer is actually the one that, for Anna Lee, I thought was like, showed the sort of, it's like the only modern one that showed sort of the attraction of ecstasy sort of in a similar way. Love Midsummer. And then for me, I wrote down like God's Daughters and the Power of Submission and Clark Garrett's book on the Shakers. Anything else that you want to like call out as far as
some The Eyes of Tammy Faye I actually really liked in 2021 HBO release with Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield.
You have a whole makeup series, right? When you're doing like makeup series,
where
with
it's
Tammy
like
Faye?
the televangelists, but that movie, I think, again, did a very similarly interesting thing where it was showing how this genuine belief and in greed and also like some really bizarre other things. I just thought it was really well done. Jessica Chastain's performance is really good. I think that if you haven't seen it, you would find it really interesting in conversation with these films. And then the other docuseries, despite being a little like, I guess it's good. You shouldn't assume what people were thinking or why they did it, but I'm always interested in that. The Mother God docuseries on HBO is really good. It doesn't go into like, because she starts her own like Mother God. Anyway, so many women start religious cults and call themselves Mother. I could just do a whole thing on that. But if there are people who are interested in the stuff that I study, my number one book recommendation for something accessible when it comes to history and domesticity in America is Home Fronts by Laura Romero. And it's such a sad thing because it's the only book she published. She was an academic at Stanford before she passed away from cancer at a very young age. But the book is an incredible and also very diverse as well, looking at Black and white women's literature in the 19th century and how domesticity basically became this platform for nation building. And for Christian nationalism is really good. So if people are interested in like a starter book, that's what I recommend. And then I think Tammy Faye is also good.
Awesome. Well, Kristina, thank you so much. This has been so fascinating. I could talk to you for like another 10 hours.
I know, we can just keep going.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to have you back on. There's like the fact, all these like, because you're a home domesticity, all these like these ones in the 50s. We got some crazy women to cover.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. If you like my channel, you will love her channel. Because there's one of her headlines is like going over Gender Trouble, Judith Butler, which is a book that I talk about too, and all these other religious ones. So definitely check her out. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too.
I'll see you. Bye.
Bye.